Okay, so we've got PFT 103 exercise psychology starting today. So this is our day by day. This is how it is going to break down. So this is going to be an 8-day class, which means that there is no midterm. The midterm thing is reserved for our 12-day classes, just because they're our longest classes. So we want to break it up into 2 chunks. Also because that's the more technical, like heavy science classes. Those fit really well into having like a foundation section and then like the specific sciences for the second half. So a little bit different organization in this class. 8 days here. It'll still be homework every other day. So there's going to be homework on day 2, 4, and day 6. But then there is no midterm. So then it's just going to go straight to the final exam on day 8. So in the last class, you probably noticed it was like 2 homeworks that fed into your midterm and then 2 more homeworks that fed into your final exam. In this class, it will be 3 homeworks that feed directly into your final exam. So it's still the same situation where half of the questions that are in your final will come from these homeworks. You'll already have seen those questions. It'll be 30 questions, so 15 of them. That means that you'll get 5 questions somewhere from homework 1, 5 homework 2 questions, and 5 homework 3 questions. But you'll also notice that we are sort of making you study more pieces of homework. Like the last time you only had to study 2 homeworks, and it was like 7.5 questions each going into the midterm or the final. This class, you got to study all 3. So we're kind of pushing the memorization scaling here just a little bit, rather than the last class. In the next mod, you'll notice it'll be actually 4 homeworks that'll feed in. So that's sort of how this is going to run. This is going to be, like I said, like exercise psychology. So we're going to talk a little bit about like what we mean when we say behavior change. Today we're talking about 2 things. We're going to introduce the concepts of behavior change, which is really just going to be like a preview of like, you could use this technique, you could use this technique, and it's like all the stuff that we are going to learn in this course, which is cool. But I'm going to move through it quick. Because like it's not designed to teach how to do those things. It's just designed to be like, here's what we're going to talk about, and why these are valuable skills in your skill book. Then we'll get into chapter 2, which is like the coaching and communication section of this course. We want to define very clearly what it is to be a coach. And that's what I always like to refer to myself as, much more than just like a trainer. Like I'll call myself a trainer, but like love the term coach because it really kind of describes what we spend our time doing a little bit more effectively. It's a very clear indicator of like what our role is. Like a coach does not do the work for you. Their job is to, make it easier for you to adhere to you doing the work. So that is going to be sort of like what we're going over today, and that's what this whole course is going to look like. Now, this is this is one of our what we call packet classes, or at least I call them that. So exercise psychology does technically have a textbook in that there was a series of chapters written about these topics. However, there's no physical book that like exists. Like if you go to NASM's website, you can't buy this textbook. But the chapters are all in these little digital PDFs, which I will be sending out to everyone. So if you're going to have these chapters to download every single day when I send it out in your email. Now, just because I know some people are maybe not like that big of a fan of like reading on their tech, and they want like a physical copy of stuff, there is no physical textbook. However, I can print these chapters down at Sochi using Sochi's copy machine. And if you want like a physical copy, just let me know, and I'll try to print that and get that to you. It will be on like fax paper, so it'll be like 8.5 by 11, and then it'll just have like a staple in the corner. So it's not exactly the same as like a book, but like still some people find that helpful. So if you're interested, just let me know. You just got to text me or email me or call me. But yeah, that's where we're headed over the next 8 days here. And then we'll have an in-person meeting. So we're here today. This is day 1 of this class. It's an 8-day class. So day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. And here is February, that's not true, March 16th, which will be our review and our final exam. So we'll do another, that'll be another in-person That's not how you hyphenate that. In-person meeting at Van Nuys Park. So we'll be meeting out there for those of you who are available. So that's the plan. I'll go ahead and send that out to everybody when I get a chance. But let's go ahead and dive on into our chapter here. Oop, no. And there's my notes. They're on the wrong side of the screen for some reason. Put that there. All right. So looking at chapter 1 here, introduction to behavior change. There are a series of videos that I will show every now and then. Not going to spend too much time on that in this first chapter here. But every now and then I'll show these little videos that are they're okay. I'm not a huge fan. They are made by NASM, which is nice, but they are a little awkward. So we want to understand that, like, obviously the number of like individuals in the health and wellness industry has increased significantly in recent years. You know, there's a lot more personal trainers out there in the world than there have been. About 13% increase. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that like employers are realizing that like there's sort of a need for their employees to improve their physical fitness levels. You know, the unhealthy lifestyles that like a lot of people sort of partake in negatively impact companies. You know, they negatively impact how a company functions and operates. And so, you know, we're starting to see a lot more like corporate wellness and things like that, where certain companies will actually offer like stipends for personal training, or maybe they'll have like a gym built into, you know, like the bottom of a building. They'll have trainers come in and do, you know, exercises and stuff. You know, we see that healthier employees are about 10 to 12% more productive than unhealthy employees. So because of that, you know, that's a growing part of this industry. And so if you are going to be a health educator, and that's what's kind of cool about this course, by the way, I've had students come out of this course being like, you know what, like I got into this to kind of be a one-on-one personal trainer, but then they kind of, you know, they kind of go through this course and they realize that like there's a lot more roles out there in the health and fitness industry rather than just working the gym floor as like a standard trainer. So maybe you find yourself working the role as a health educator instead, you know, which is, you know, kind of similar to like life coaching, if you think about that. So what is a health educator? Well, it's an occupation that is responsible for, you know, health and fitness assessments of like groups of people, right? And then they're going to create and program a plan that is going to best fit the needs of that group based on that assessment. And then their job is to like evaluate how effectively that plan is working and work to like drive their clients like towards success, right? So, you know, a health educator, it's a specific role within the health and wellness industry, and we plan, we program, and we implement behavior change strategies for our clients, you know, because you could write the world's greatest program. You know, you could have like, I'm sure like most of those YouTube fitness personalities that we see out there, most of those programs that they have that they're selling are actually probably pretty decent. But if you can't get your client to do it and stick to it, it's not going to matter. So that's really kind of what we're looking for, right? We're trying to sort of get the fitness, the nutrition, and the behavior change aspects of it sort of all implemented together. So, you know, we do know that like obviously there's a lot of job opportunities here. NASM always does this in the beginning of their chapters, by the way. Oh, we got Dalen in here. NASM loves to start like a lot of their chapters with like, here's why you have job security, like here's why you bought this packet. So we do see an increase in healthcare costs. We see an increase in job opportunities and things like that. You know, obesity is on the climb. So we need more and more personal trainers to kind of, you know, combat that, I guess. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of like different techniques. Our job in the realm of like, you know, when we say like exercise psychology, right? Our role is to implement behavior change strategies. So we're talking a lot about like behavior, you know, therapy lessons. So we're not therapists, like make no mistake about it, but like behavior therapy which is like a really effective tool that's out there, right? This is using psychology in order to understand like basically like habit loops that our clients have. Eric, you just said that you've got a lot of dogs, right? Like if you've tried to like teach a dog a trick, right? You're applying behavior therapy, and behavior therapy is basically where you're like, sit, and then they're like, huh? And then like you're like, sit, and you teach them how to do the action, and then you give them like a treat or something, and they're like, oh, okay. And they start to draw an association between like sitting and getting a treat. And then that eventually becomes like a habit. That's exactly how our brains work, actually. We work in a very similar thing, This is why I always talk about how like Oreos, or there was a reason Oreos are such a freaking addictive food. Not only are they like packed full of sugar, which basically makes your brain go, oh, if I put this thing in my mouth, I get a big sugar hit, which is already going to create a pretty strong loop on its own. But it also, like, Oreos are kind of fun to eat, right? You twist them apart, you do the lick thing, right? Dip them in milk if you have to. Like all of that, like that action, that kinetic energy is also stimulating. And so then it creates an even stronger habit loop, which is why all of a sudden, like, you go in for 2 Oreos and then the sleep is gone. So that's kind of understanding behavior therapy is something we're definitely gonna look at. We're gonna look at like, establishing healthy lifestyles through creating good habit loops, and using different methods in order to like maybe break old destructive habit loops. And maybe that's not the technique that you want to employ, maybe that's not the only technique that you want to use with your clients. Maybe instead you decide to use like what's called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is where we actually use behavior therapy, but we focus much more on like the thoughts and feelings of our clients, right? And this is a really great way. This is especially good with like healthy eating in particular, is works really well because a lot of people have like emotional attachments to food. Social cognitive theory is another method that you might end up like implementing with your clients, where we use different like strategies and social pressures, peer pressure in positive ways, in order to like increase like healthy targeted behaviors. This is why having like a gym partner is so effective. I like my roommates and I sometimes do these morning hikes, which I love because like I'm kind of I like getting up in the morning. And it'll be like early in the morning, and we'll have like a little 3-person thread where it's like, oh, we doing this? And I'm always like, yeah, let's get up. Come on, gotta go. And it's like that social cognitive theory, like that's, one person who's gung ho might motivate other people when their motivation is lacking, We've got visual cognitive behavioral. Oh yeah. That's a weird order for this to go in. There's also just cognitive behavioral skills, kind of going back to CBT here. But this is really good for mitigating like depressive feelings as well. Social cognitive behavioral therapy is really understanding all of your thoughts in the same way that like behavior therapy is understanding like your habit loops. Cognitive behavioral therapy is understanding your thought loops or your emotional loops. Like I know that like there are certain times where something will happen and then I will get frustrated and then I will feel out of control and then I get angry. Like frustration leads to feelings of like a lack of control, which leads to feelings of anger, right? So if I can recognize that early on, I can, remind myself that I am in control, of my own actions, or at least I'm in control of like how I emotionally or psychologically respond to something, even if I'm not in control of the situation. And that can calm me down and keep me, sane. It doesn't always work, but like that's where we use cognitive behavioral therapy. A couple other ones I threw in here into the notes just because they are other methods we're also going to use. We can use visualization, which is a really effective strategy. A lot of like professional athlete coaches are really huge on visualization. You see yourself winning. If anybody ever uses like a vision board, or if you've ever just like told yourself the same thing and like positively reinforced yourself doing certain things every single day, that's visualization. That can be a really effective way to maybe deal with scary scenarios that are scary, or just reinforcing certain habits. And then goal setting. Obviously, goal setting is huge. I mean, we talk about this in general, right? Even outside of our exercise psychology classes, just because this is a huge part of our industry, translating our clients' goals into actions, right? So we can we're going to talk about the SMART goal system and how to create effective goals. So, and what's great about all of these different methods is they can be applied to all of the elements of like a healthy lifestyle, not just like, exercise, right? This can be applied to your nutrition, which will feed better into your fitness, which will feed better into your behavior change. This is sort of this is like a pyramid of awesomeness right here, or a triangle of awesomeness. This is the Triforce of fitness success. So we do need like, effective behavior change, because you could have the greatest diet and the greatest program. If you don't do it, it's not going to matter. If you're really great about doing your nutrition, but you're not exercising, you could have better results. Same thing is true if you are really good about doing your exercise, but not so good about your nutrition. So these all really, really come together very strongly here. So our role as fitness professionals, right, is to use psychological principles in order to help our clients achieve greater results. So we are going to talk a lot about different psychological principles. We're going to talk a lot about how to implement them. However, it should be noted that that does not mean we are applying therapy. We are not therapists, right? That's totally outside of our scope of practice. But what we do is we apply what is called guided self-help. And this is the idea of like being a coach. You guys have heard me talk about guided self-help before, but the idea here is that it relies on this relationship where we are facilitating change in our client by giving them the knowledge and the support that they need to create that change. It is, you've heard that phrase before where you say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that phrase is meant to describe like a really stubborn person. It's that phrase is meant to just say like, well, you can try to get a stubborn person to do something, but they won't, right? Because they're stubborn. I like to use that phrase in the realm of like guided self-help. Like your job is to like, clear the path, like if there's brush and a giant boulder in the way of a lake, your job is to clear all that out and put LED lights in a nice paved road, and then like walls that mean that you can't escape down any other direction. Your job is to make it very clear that it's like, this is what you told me you wanted to achieve. Look, all you have to do is walk down that path right there, right? You're clearing the way. You are making it easier. You're giving your client the knowledge. You're giving them all the support in the world. You're like, you can do it. Walk down the freaking road, right? To get them to that lake. But your job is not to dunk their head in the water. You can lead a horse to water. You cannot make them drink, and you shouldn't, right? Because if you do it for them, that's not helping anybody, that's not going to create long-term sustainable change. What we need is this guided self-help. We need them to be the ones that are putting the effort in. There's a really great there's this old school movie called Arthur. There was a remake of it a couple years back actually, with what's that British guy's name? Anyway, it's all about the super rich dude. It's literally just about a rich guy, and it starred Dudley Moore, and he was just this rich socialite who, was so rich he never had to work for anything in his life, and he was just drunk all the time. That's the comedy of the movie. He's just kind of obnoxious and drunk. But he meets at one point, he goes to his mom, and his mom's like working out with a personal trainer, and her personal trainer is just like this shirtless dude who is just massive, and he's working out. And he's like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm getting my daily action. She's sitting there drinking like a martini or whatever. And it's like, yeah, like, and at one point he like grabs her arms and he's like helping her, and she's into it because it's this big hunky guy. And it's like, that's not the trainer we want to be, right? Like, we don't want to like do it for our clients. We want to make we want to guide our clients to do it. So as a wellness professional, we are going to work with our clients to help them adopt healthy behaviors, whether those healthy behaviors are related to their exercise or their nutrition. Maybe it's dedicated to like lifestyle changes, or just behavioral changes, right? Helping them create healthy habits. Can't tell you how often you guys are going to have to talk about sleep. Good God, that is going to become a huge part of your careers. You'd think that you would spend most of your time talking about dumbbells, but guess what? The biggest thing people struggle with is sleeping enough. People suck at sleeping. Like, let me tell you, I know I'm bad at it, And so that getting enough sleep, getting a regular sleep cycle and helping your clients do it can make a huge difference in a night and day difference when it comes to like the success of your client. So we want to make sure that we are definitely applying these different skills to help our clients with guided self-help, right? We're leading them to water. So there are a lot of services out there. You guys might, after this class, maybe you're inspired to say, yeah, maybe I don't want to be a straight up trainer on the gym floor. Maybe instead I want to be like a life coach, right? I've had a couple students like go off and do that. You know, they still work out regularly and they still know a lot about exercise. I almost compromised myself there. This is being recorded, so it's a great way for me to get in trouble. You know, maybe they still know a ton about exercise, but you know, they instead focus more on like the life coaching thing. Because maybe that's where there's a lot of business in their area and that's what they found really fulfilling. Or maybe you want to be just like a health educator or a consultant. Maybe you want to work in the realm of nutrition and help people like create healthier like nutritional habits. So there's a lot of different like roles and opportunities that are out there, right? So you can expand yourself, you know, not that you don't have to be a certified personal trainer, but this material, by the way, is based around NASM's BCS, which is their behavior change specialization. So this is where our materials came from. You know, and it's going to be all about like using behavior change to more effectively like work with your clients. I click add to cart. Of course I did. That's nice. Don't do that. I've spent enough money on NASM stuff this year. It's my recertification year, so I was like, so a lot of really cool like opportunities out there. Client testimonials, which are always nice to, you know, you kind of want to be the trainer who is known in the gym for being like, oh yeah, Erica, she will kick your butt and it is a hard workout, but her best quality is that like she will make a program for you that is so easy to stick through. Like I've had no problem sticking to this and I've yo-yo dieted my whole life. You know, that's a premium compliment, you know? So behavior change strategies. And then especially what's really cool about that is we also have like, you know, coaching via the phone or via the internet. I mean, especially like in this world that we're in right now, you know, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for like over the internet coaching and things like that. So looking at this, what's kind of cool about this is we are going to focus less on the OPT model, which you guys are a little familiar with, right? The staircase of how we pick stabilization routines into strength into power. But you can also implement a kind of similar model with this idea of behavior change. Like you're not going to do stabilization behavior change or anything like that, but you're going to start by like working on the small things with your clients. Like when I have a client who is, you know, first working on their diet, like I actually just did this a couple of nights ago. So a friend of mine was looking, she's trying to lose a little bit of weight and she was like, hey, like, can I hire you? And I was like, don't worry about hiring me, but like, let's meet and I'll give you a little bit of like tips and tricks and stuff. And I was like, why don't we meet tonight? And I gave her some general nutritional information, a little bit of general exercise information. And then I told her, I was like, all right, so what I want you to do is like, you know, use your food journal for the next week, be as accurate as possible. Tell me what you're drinking, like everything. If it went into your body, I want it to go into your journal. And come back in a week and we'll talk again. And so like that way I can get a really good, clear idea of like what her food looks like. So I can, you know, help her create a dietary plan that is easy for her to stick to. Because if I said something like, you know, well, you gotta eat broccoli. And she's like, well, I hate broccoli. And it's like, well, broccoli's healthy, so you gotta eat it, right? Like that's not gonna be sustainable. She's not gonna be able to stick to that. So there's a couple different things that we are also going to talk about a lot in this course, and we're going to keep coming back to it. And what's great about this is the same stuff that is, well, the first half of this is the same stuff that is in your regular NASM textbooks. This will also obviously prep you for your normal exam. So first thing we're going to be looking at, one of the most common things that we're going to revisit frequently is what's called Prochaska's trans-theoretical model of change, which is always fun to say. But we're not going to say that. We're going to call it the stages of change model. And the idea here is that it focuses on an individual client's ability to change. Not everybody's ready for change. How many times have you guys been super motivated after you watch like a YouTube video or read an article, or maybe your friend's doing something, and you're like, I want to do that. And you get like super motivated. You're like, yeah, I'm in, let's go. Right. And you are like motivated. But what's funny about like human beings is motivation only goes so far. We are only so excited for so long about something. And then that motivation is not enough to get us to actually take action a lot of times. So what you need are other support systems in place to make sure that you actually stick through stuff. So it kind of depends on where you fall in this model of change here. Not everybody is ready for change. I mean, if I were to write the world's greatest program for somebody who is not thinking about exercise at all, and I'm like, this is the world's greatest program, this program will make you the fittest person on the planet, and I gave it to somebody who's like, doesn't want to exercise, they'd be like, great, cool, thanks. And it's going to go in a drawer and it's going to sit there and probably never get used. So we got to make sure we can recognize where our clients are in that stages of change. So we're going to use the trans-theoretical to do that. And then there's also the idea of like what's called Lazarus's multimodal screening. We're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. But I'm sorry, we're going to talk more about that on Monday. And multimodal screening is basically just like a little bit of a more in-depth version of assessing a client to get a really clear picture of like how their brain works. So we'll talk a little, in the same way that like fitness assessments are incredibly important for us to know what exercises to give our clients based on their posture. Multimodal screening is really important for us to understand like what exercises are going to be really important for our client based on their like brains, their habits, right? Their psychology. So the stages of change that we've got are going to be pre-contemplation, which is a client who's not thinking about changing. Contemplation is a client who's thinking about changing, but they haven't taken any action. Preparation, which is a client who's maybe taken very small actions to kind of get ready for change. Action, which is where they've done it, but they haven't like maintained it for a very long time, so they are in danger of falling backwards. Maintenance, who is a client who is not so much in danger of falling backwards because they've been doing it for quite a while. And then termination, where it's like, okay, that's a habit at this point. They're not at risk for falling backwards. Picture like a little kid, right? When you're like, hey, you need to take a shower, and they're like, ugh, but I want to just play, right? And run around and get more dirty, right? And then eventually we build the habit of like, hey, shower every day, right? Hopefully everyone is in the termination stage of remembering to shower daily. And then we've got, like I said, multimodal screening, which is a method for understanding how our clients think and act or think and behave, right? And we're going to use this acronym. Oh, by the way, a lot of acronyms in our psychology class. But we call it the basic ID acronym, right? And it stands for, what are your clients' behaviors? How are they psychologically affected by things? How are they physically affected by things? What type of imagery do they conjure up? I tend to be like, it's funny, I'm not so good at using imagery, but I have very intense imagery. I like a lot, like I'm very hyperbolic, which means I like to exaggerate a lot. And so like sometimes like I'll conjure up really intense imagery. It's like, oh, I'm going to murder that person. Well, what I mean to say is I'm going to have a strong conversation with them. Cognition, which is like, do they have negative thoughts? They have positive thoughts generally. What are their interpersonal relationships like? And then, what type of like drugs might they be on that's like affecting their body or their psychology in certain ways, or what is their just general biology, and this is, we do look at like this is a really big one, even just like if your client like doesn't get enough sleep because like they just have biologically like a bad sleep schedule, right? This is going to be part of that. So that is what we're looking at in the basic ID: your behavior, effect, sensation, imagery, cognition, and interpersonal relationships, drugs, biology. So that is chapter 1. Like I said, you're going to find that chapter 1 in today's email, as well as for download in the Canvas thing. And then, read through that today. Read through that. And then here we're going to go ahead and go into chapter 2. So let's even more clearly, let's talk about what it means to be a coach, right? So that first chapter is really just like, here's what you're going to learn over the next 8 days. let's take a look at what coaching is, right? Let's define coaching and talk about like, what's a good coach? And I'm about to talk about one of my favorite things. So I'm excited. So looking at coaching, right? Coaching is great. Coaching is, this, an integral, it's a component of so many different things. Like your doctor should be your coach as well. They're often not very good at it because they don't take coaching lessons. But like, medical professionals should be there to like coach you towards success, but a lot of times, like that's what people say when they say like, doctors get like a bad rap sometimes. People are like, oh, I had the worst doctor. I had this crappy doctor, and it's like, did your doctor do like what they were supposed to do? But then like, they just didn't give them very much support afterwards. So they ended up falling back into old habits or something, right? Like you got in, they cured you and then got you up, and they didn't set you up for success to not get sick again, right? That's what we need. Like, that's what we need, like a coach to help us like restructure things, same thing with like personal training. I can't tell you how many times this is a weird thing that clients love to do. I don't know if they think that they are going to endear themselves to me more when they say stuff like this, but I will get clients who like will talk about their crappy personal trainers that they used to have. They're like, oh, my old trainer was the worst. And it's so interesting. And I'm like, and they'll say your workouts are so much this or that. And it's like, I'll bet their workouts were fine. Like realistically, like don't get me wrong, I'm confident in my ability to be a great trainer as well. So no doubt in my mind that yeah, I'm better. There's the confidence. But I'm also pretty sure that like their trainer was probably fine at the training aspect. Like I'll bet if I put them on a gym floor, they're probably doing a decent enough job, for the most part. But I'll bet like the thing that meant that like what their client means to communicate is that their trainer was not so good at motivating them or structuring their workouts in such a way that it was easy to handle and easy to stick to. And so this is a part of the same on the exact flip side of this. This is why I think people like keto so much. Keto is easy to stick to. When you get to eat bacon every day, that's a diet that most people can adhere to pretty easily. And so because of the adherence level is very high and it's a calorie restriction like any diet would be, I think that like it feels like it's being much more effective. And so people feel like it's very successful. Anything can be successful as long as it's done the right way, So that's, where we look at this like coaching. And the same thing is true of social workers, teachers, whatever, right? Counselors, therapists, physical therapists, and then obviously us, right? Personal trainers. It's into the teachers. I think like in school, I remember like people being like, this teacher sucked. And it's like, I remember, being in those lessons. I was like, yeah, I agree. Like the teacher kind of sucks. But looking back on it with like, an adult hindsight brain, I'm like, yeah, their lectures were fine. Like they taught the information. It's not like they're making stuff up, but they didn't like go around and support everyone in such a way that made it easy to absorb, and that's the difference. I think that's the difference between like a good coach and a bad coach. So, we are encouraging our clients to take ownership, take control of their actions, right? So defining coaching, and this is going to be key here. We want to make sure we have this very clearly defined. Defining coaching. It is a connection between two individuals in which a coach, primarily through asking questions and things like that, we're going to encourage our client to make the changes that they desire. So we are there to apply this guided self-help principle, right? We are asking questions to get maybe, to get a clearer idea ourselves, but a lot of times asking questions is just a great way to get someone else to understand clarity, right? By the way, if you guys here's a study tip for you. If you want to absorb information faster, here's a really fun way to study. When you are taking notes, you can reword your definitions or reword them in such a way that you would explain it to someone else. Like when you're writing your notes and stuff, if you're like, like coaching, for instance, if you're like reading this definition maybe is just, it sounds like Latin, connection between two individuals, which a coach primarily through asking questions encourages the client to make a desired change, right? What do I mean? What does this mean, right? If you were to write this down underneath it and say like, what does that mean to you? If you had to explain this to someone else, how would you describe it to them? And you'd say like, Coaching is where I'm going to ask a lot of questions so that like you and I both have a very clear idea of how I can encourage you to move forward without doing it for you. Right. And maybe that definition locks in your head, gives you a much clearer idea of things. It's a great way to study anatomy. It's a great way to study physiology, to memorize all your stuff. When you say, 12 to 20 reps, you could memorize it that way. You just memorize it as high reps and then be like, what do I mean by high reps? Oh, I mean 12 to 20. So it's a very circular, good way to study. And that's kind of, that little tip right there is something that like a coach can give. Lots of tips are always very, very helpful. But again, we are going to ask questions because a lot of times people will then describe what they mean. And then that will give you a clear understanding of what it is that they are working towards, but it will also give them a clear understanding of what they're working towards. So I love to ask that to my clients. Like I never let my clients off the hook ever. When my clients say they want to like lose weight, I never let it end there. And I always ask them like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean you want to lose weight? And then that will get them talking a little bit more. It's like, well, I want to lose like, I want to lose my belly fat. And it's like, okay, so you want to lose your belly fat, which is different than weight. And then like, the conversation gets deeper and deeper and deeper until finally they have a really clear understanding of what they really want. They want to look better for some reason, or they want to fit into a specific dress for a specific event because what's really important to them is their family's having or something. So coaching, what's really great about it is it encourages our clients to take ownership, right? That's the really big thing here. Now, what are we responsible for? Big thing to remember, guys, that we are responsible for. We are not responsible for this is going to sound so weird when I say this sentence in particular. We are not responsible for our clients' success. That sounds very, very odd. And it sounds like I'm just like, saying you don't need to help your client succeed. That's not what I'm saying. But we are not the ones fully responsible for our client. Our client, at the end of the day, they are responsible for their own success. However, we are responsible for making that road to success as easy to travel down as possible. So this is going to involve like monitoring our clients' progress. If they are not making progress, we got to monitor it and say like, hey, this isn't working. What are we doing wrong? What do we need to change, right? Again, like I love having this conversation with my clients when it comes down to like diet and exercise. Here's for those of you who have been through like our weight loss class, you'll remember me saying this. Like we all live in the same world with the same physics. A pound of fat is 3,500 calories. We all live in a world where that is a true sentence. None of us live in a world where that's not true. So if your client is cutting 3,500 calories from their diet every week, they should be losing a pound of fat a week. And if they don't, then we know, right, by measuring that progress, we know that something's wrong. It doesn't mean that your client and we got to just figure out like what that is, right? We got to offer reflective feedback and say like, hey, it's not working. So either we're not actually cutting 3,500 calories a week because maybe the portion sizes aren't correct. Maybe we're measuring improperly. Maybe I calculated your BMR wrong. Maybe you're not working as hard as you thought you were in the gym. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. And then your body is slowing your metabolism the next day because it's just building up cortisol and stress hormones like crazy. Or maybe, it's just a little bit like passive energy that we don't really realize. Like your metabolism is a little bit slower than we thought it was. Because we know if we were doing everything right, we would lose exactly a pound a week. We just know that, right? That is a proven physical fact. So something is there, and it's not necessarily always their fault. Like that's not the point of like bringing this up. The point is to understand like, okay, great, we need to pivot. Your equation just got a little bit longer, So we are going to encourage our client to take, more control, more ownership over those processes, and be like, what do we need to adjust? What can we do to encourage success here? And that leads me to my favorite thing to talk about. Sorry, actually, it doesn't quite. One other thing, coaching. We are focusing on the now. This is a really big deal, guys. Coaching focuses on a client's current situation. We do not go into the past. That is where we are talking about like therapy. Our job is not to go into someone's past and be like, tell me about your mother. Don't do that. Also, Sigmund Freud's dumb, so don't do that either. Even if you were a therapist. Hot take, by the way. But like, yeah, we don't go into the past. We also don't spend too much time focusing on the future unless we are calling ourselves like life coaches. What we are focusing on is improving current situations. That's really our big role. So we are going to assist our client by suggesting possible solutions that they can implement. And then we're going to encourage our client as much as possible. We're there to be in their corner. Now, being in their corner, that leads me to my favorite freaking thing. So this is one of the huge things that we as trainers must have in order to be a very successful coach. Coaching benefits from what is called an unconditional positive regard. Unconditional meaning that it does not cost anything. It does not take any effort. It is just black and white, something that does happen. Birds fly, fish swim. Unconditional means that we are always doing this for no reason. It is just happening, right? And the other half of that is that it is a positive regard. And what that means is that you as a coach must, in order to be a good coach, believe with your heart of hearts that your client is going to succeed. That's the unconditional positive regard, okay? The unconditional positive regard is the positive expectation of the coach that the client has the capacity to grow and that they have the ability to find the answers that they need. So my way of phrasing this, the way I like to memorize this concept and put it into my own words, you must have the belief that your client is going to change and meet their goals. The second you lose that belief, the power of coaching is lost. Now, unconditional positive regard does not mean that you are always just going to be positive with your client. And it's okay. Yeah, you had 6 donuts for dinner last night instead of that amazing salad that we talked about how to build. That's okay. That is not an unconditional positive regard. That's being unconditionally positive. Like, yeah, it's fine. Sometimes coaching involves like tough love. Be like, hey, that's super not okay if you want to meet your goals. It's okay, like as a person, like morally, like you want to do it, fine, I don't care. But I do care about you meeting your goals, and you did something that is counterproductive to meeting those goals. So we have to recognize that like taking that type of action is outside of the realm of actions that are going to help you down the path that we are traveling. So it's not okay, right? So it doesn't, again, this isn't like the type of like that's a tough love conversation, right? But it isn't coming from a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place. I'm not making a value judgment about this person. I'm not saying that my client is less valuable as a person because they fell off the wagon for a second, right? Totally not doing that. I'd be a monster if I did that, right? But what I am doing is saying like we recognize that like if you're trying to meet your goal, these actions do not feed into that, but these actions do. So we need to focus 9 out of 10 times on these actions, and we need to try to avoid these most of the time, right? That's what's important here, right? And I always like to use like kind of numbers and math because I tend to be kind of a numbery person, even though I'm terrible at math. To kind of explain this, if you wanted to save $12,000 by the end of a year, right? Let's say it's $12,000 by the end of the year, right? That means that every month on the last day of the month, let's say January 31st, February 28th, whatever it is, you got to put $1,000 into a savings account, right? So boom, every single month at the end of the month. And if you suddenly do this action, there's a really great deal, like just like a once in a lifetime incredible deal on a cruise to Mexico, something just like a fantastic, once in a lifetime cheap deal, but it may be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And if you choose to like, take that opportunity and it costs you your ability to like put this money into your savings account, like you said you were going to do, you can do that, and I'm there to like coach you and like be in your corner and stuff. But like my job is going to be to say like, hey, like great deal, you crushed it, like way to pay attention to the internet and stuff. But like we need to recognize that this fell outside of your plan, right? This is great maybe for your life overall, but it is not helping you meet this one specific goal. Now you have to recognize and accept the fact that like we chose to do this. So your priorities laid outside of your initial priorities. You can have new priorities and I will still coach you. Absolutely. Right. Again, we're in our client's corner, but we have to recognize that like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You don't get both a lot of times, right? If you are choosing to sacrifice one thing in order to have something else, great. But this is where I always caution people. A lot of times it's not conscious choices, right? In this example that I just gave, maybe your client totally justifies it. They're like, yeah, it was a once in a lifetime thing. And I thought that this $12,000 savings thing was the most important thing. But then I saw this deal and I realized, you know what? This is actually very important to me because I've always wanted to go to Mexico, always wanted to go on a cruise, and wanted to do this, and wanted to do that. So I'm going to sacrifice a little bit. And rather than meet my goal at the end of 1 year, I'm going to meet my goal at the end of 1 year and 1 month. So I'm changing my goal because I wanted something else. Great. I'm on board. Let's do it. Love it. We got a new goal. I'm coaching you towards that now. Awesome. Totally fine. But most of the time, people make their decisions unconsciously. A lot of times things become automatic or easy, and they don't consciously choose to do these things. Then what ends up happening is they made some type of unconscious choice, which pulled them off the path to meet their goal. And then they start to get closer to their goal, and then they start to have regret. And that is going to lead to negative thoughts, emotions, and usually negative behaviors. And then they fall off the wagon entirely. This is that person that you know who has done like a fad diet because they got super motivated by it. They got it super motivated by like some version of a fad. Yeah, they watched an inspiring video on YouTube or something. It's like, I did keto and I did this. And it's like, I'm doing keto. I'm going to do that. They got really motivated by it. And then so they get on it. And then the first, or maybe the 60th time it was hard, right? It was difficult to adhere to. Something happened, and they made a choice where they're like, you know what? This is totally not within my plan, but I want that candy bar. I want it. And so they make like an unconscious, and they eat it, and then they fall out of ketosis. They get a lot of sugar, right? And suddenly the next week when they go to check the scale weight, it doesn't budge the way it was supposed to. And then they're like, ugh, it's not working. And they don't take the time to recognize that like, well, it's not working because we fell off the path, right? So anyway, that is what the unconditional positive regard is. What we need to believe that our client has the capacity to stay on this path. It does not mean just saying, yeah, it's okay, it's fine, everything's fine, right? It's not about just like staying positive all the time, you don't do your homework, you fail the class. Hey, like, I believe that you can pass the next one, right? I'm there, right? I'm in the corner, right? But unconditional positive regard means you have to have the belief that they can succeed in their goals. If your client is trying to like lose weight and they go to Burger King 499 days in a row, you have to have this belief that on day 500, they will not go. You have to believe that your client is going to follow and succeed. The minute you lose that, you lose a lot of your power as a coach. It's in the back of your head. You start disliking your sessions. You start not being stoked to like help your client meet their goals. You start having like a negative outlook on their success. Definitely not something we want to do. So love talking about that. I can talk about it all day, clearly. Do you guys have any questions on that one or comments? The psychology class, by the way, is a great place to have fun, some of the most fun discussions in the whole PFT program. So if you've got comments or anything, let them rip, guys.
Nothing right now.
All right, fair enough. So other parts of coaching competencies. So this is sort of like in order. what we're about to go through. So these are the things that we are going to do as a coach, right? First thing you're going to do is establish a coaching agreement. This is, I love having this written down, but a lot of times it's just verbal. But effective agreements are setting very, well, hold on, we're going to go through this page by page. We're going to establish a coaching agreement. We're going to start developing trust and rapport with our client. We are always going to demonstrate empathy and emotional support. We are going to always provide very helpful examples to our clients. I do that. I like to tell a lot of stories. That's my favorite way to kind of give examples of stuff that I've sort of experienced in my career. You guys are like, yes, you do. Active listening is another big one, challenge our clients' thinking. This is going to be a huge part, right? Sometimes you got to give your client a little pushback. Establish a very clear focus for your client. Again, try to make that path as clean as possible. Provide options for your client. Maybe there's a couple other paths, shortcuts even, that make it easier for them to get there. And then we always want to ask appropriate questions, the questions that are going to lead to, that keep us focused and, keep your client moving towards success. So when I say establishing an effective coaching agreement, this is right in the beginning, right? Effective agreements, like the best agreements, are the ones that specify very clear boundaries of time, what the actual engagement is, and what the financial commitment is. So you want to have a very super clear outline of what is expected of you as the coach, but also what is expected of them as the client. So a lot of times that involves very clear start and end dates. Even in the business side of things, guys, aside from this coaching stuff, and aside from the ways that we coach our clients towards success, very clear start and end dates are really, really important when you are setting up a contract with your client. Like, okay, we've got 8 sessions that cost you this many dollars. They are each for 60 minutes, and you have until this date to use them. Be as clear about that as possible. No one wants to have that stupid conversation where they're like, I thought I had more sessions. I thought they lasted longer. It's like, no, you didn't, because I was super clear, right? And if you did think then then that's your fault and not mine. I can't tell you how many times you will have this in your career where you will explain the cancellation policy, right? This is another one, like missed appointment policies, financial arrangements, right? Clients will say, I thought it was this many dollars per session. Nope, I could not have been more clear when we started this relationship. It is this many dollars per session. Or like, hey, I didn't know, I gave you like 18 hours notice that I wasn't going to be here today. And it's like, well, your agreement says 24 hours notice. Texting me at 2 a.m, the day before something is not an effective way to get me to try to like find a new person to take your slot. You give me 24 hours notice, like, great, like, cancel away. So that's huge. Also, what is covered in the coaching process is really important. Like, what is your role? Like, what are you doing? What are you not doing? When my clients ask me like, hey, so can you write me a meal plan? I will say, no, I cannot do that legally. What I can do is we can work together to develop a meal plan that is a very good example and can act as a template that then you can choose to make specific like food choices around. I can totally do that. You and I can establish like a list of, you want to run by me, like, is this healthy? I can answer yes or no. Absolutely. I can do it all day. I can give you examples of really healthy meal plans, but no, I am not a registered dietitian. So therefore, this coaching process is, you do not get customized meal plans. It's not part of my role. Establish that up front, guys. You do not want to run into a problem with a client that you've been training for a week or two who is not getting the product that they think they purchased. And then also establishing trust and rapport. This is huge in the coaching world, right? We got to make sure that our client trusts us and believes us, right? We want to make sure that we can, we read their general responses to our questions and behaviors. Figure out how to connect to your client. Even just as simple as like mirroring your client can be a really effective way to help build a little bit of rapport and a little bit of trust with your client. If you find that your client's a little like reserved, well, then you can be a little more quiet and a little reserved yourself, rather than being like, let's do this, you pump, let's go. You don't need to do that. They're gonna be like, ugh, too much energy, right? That's not the type of person that is. But On the flip side, if that person's like really motivated and like amped up and excited, get amped up and excited. Like mirroring is a great way to make people feel more comfortable. We feel more comfortable around people that we see as similar to our in-group. So establish your trust and rapport with your client. Make eye contact, ask them healthy, intelligent questions. All of these are going to be really, really big parts of this. And then you're going to try to display as much empathy and emotional support as you can with your client, right? We're going to do this through the concept of presence. Presence, or sometimes, kind of similar to like active listening, although we see active listening down here. Presence is this authentic inner focus that you have for your client, where you are genuinely hearing them, but you are also giving them outward signs of attention. So outward signs of attention include your posture, standing upright and maintaining eye contact, nodding, and even just empathetic statements like, wow, that sounds like that was really hard. All of that is displaying presence. If you do that, you will, build a much stronger connection with your client. It is a great way to develop rapport. Here's a couple examples, by the way. Like, I hear what you're saying. That's one of my favorite empathetic statements, by the way. I love it. I hear you. That sounds like a rough situation. I know what you're doing isn't easy, right? You have the ability to face it. Here's the encouraging, right? You have the ability to face this. You are absolutely capable. Both those are good. The encouraging statements are a really effective way to build rapport. Empathetic statements are a really effective way to build rapport. Try to provide as many helpful examples to your client as possible. This is another really big part of this. Inspiring stories are just a great one. I love telling fun stories about like my clients or ex-students or people that I've met, stories that I've seen. I love using inspiring stories to motivate people. And sometimes that can be a really big part of success. So, sometimes people just learn by seeing. I love sending people motivating videos. I think that's a fun thing. That's why I send so many gifts. I love gifts. Active listening, that's another big one. Active listening is similar to, just like listening, right? But again, you are showing outward signs of attentive focus. You are making eye contact. You are not like crossing your arms. You're not like fiddling around with stuff inside your pockets. You're not looking at your phone, right? And then one of the other things is like ask questions related to what it is they're saying. One of the best ways you can prove that you are actively listening to someone is to basically parrot back to them what they said, like repeat back to them what they said, but in your own words. So what you're saying is ... That's a great way to show you're active listening. Or rather than just being like, yeah, yeah, right? Like active listening involves like asking specific questions related to what it is that they are talking about. Oh, kind of similar to, something like that. So there's a lot of different strategies for active listening, by the way, right? Show that you're listening by maintaining eye contact, nodding, or taking notes. Taking notes is a great way to show that you're clearly listening. Focus completely on your client. Do not get that phone out. Everybody, invest in a freaking stopwatch. It is a great tool at your disposal. Try to filter out any internal chatter. It's like in a movie when you see somebody's like talking and then they go into the person who's listening's brain and they're like, did I pick up my laundry? Ask them questions that don't require just like a yes or no answer, right? So how did that make you feel, right, is a really good example of like a probing question. Try to hold your silences. Don't feel like you have to fill any dead time with talking. This is true in your training sessions, by the way. Like when you're on the gym floor, you don't have to fill every single moment. And then try to use their language, right? If they use like a very specific word, like a very intense word or something, use that word as well, right? That's a great way to again, it shows that you are actively listening to them. This is, if you've ever been yelled at by your mom and your mom's like, hey, did you hear me? And you're like, yeah, I heard you. And they're like, what did I say? So like, go do the dishes, right? Like, and it's like, you repeat back exactly what they said, but like the reason you're, getting yelled at is because I remember my mom would say like, hey, you heard me. Or no, she's like, what did she say? You You heard me, you didn't listen to me. This is so funny that I cannot recall what my mom said because clearly I wasn't listening. She's like, you heard me, but you listened to me, or you listened, but you didn't hear me. Yeah, she would always say something like that. And I'd be like, oh, God, and like stab me in the heart. So that's a big part of coaching and a great way to build rapport. Actively listen. Now, on the flip side of that, there is also like challenging your client's thinking. It's not always about agreeing with someone. This is the difference. I think this is a problem that sometimes people have. We a lot of times people have trouble disagreeing with others because they think that by disagreeing with them, they'll lose that person's affection, and it's like, no, like that's it. I mean, if that's true, then you didn't actually have any affection to begin with. You didn't have very much rapport with this person. It's okay to like challenge someone, saying this is the difference between being nice to someone and being good to someone. Being nice to them is like, letting them get away with whatever makes them feel good in the moment. But being good to them is being like, hey, that's a dumb thing to do. Don't do that. Because like I care about you, and I believe that like this is going to lead to you being a stronger, healthier person overall. So challenge the thinking, right? Communicate a positive action, right? A positive attitude, but challenge their negative thoughts or maybe their ineffective strategies. Be like, we're not saying like, yeah, that's a dumb way to do, right? Like that was a extreme example. I shouldn't have said it that way, but like we want to challenge them. It's like, hey, like clearly this isn't working, right? What you've been trying, why not try something else, right? What is there to lose? So one of the ways you can do this by challenging someone's thinking is by doing what's called reframing. Reframing is a really effective tool here, but basically you're going to ask specific questions. You're going to lead your client by asking them questions, which will lead to them seeing things in a fairer, more objective light, right? And so they'll have like a much more accurate, very objective viewpoint of the situation, right? Like if your client says like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do to stick to this diet, I'm still not losing weight, right? Reframe them. It's like, well, if we were doing everything we needed to do, we would have lost weight, right? So clearly there's something that we are not doing. I'm not saying that you're not putting in massive amounts of effort. I believe that you are trying your best, but I also believe that something is at play in the background that is keeping you from actual success, actualizing that success. So let's see if we can think about like, what is that? Are we not burning as much energy as we think? Are we sitting too much because of how hard we were working? Are we overtraining? Are we working too hard? And your body's not recovering enough, which means that you're just in constant stress hormones, right? Like, what is it? Let's take a look. Let's say, because we know we would succeed. We calculated this out. So I want to show you guys a really good example of reframing. This is one of my favorite videos that I've ever freaking watched on the internet. But I want to show you this video. Actually, this is actually a graduation speech by a guy named David Foster Wallace, who's an author. They took this graduation speech and somebody made like a little short film around it. Some of the speech is actually cut out. If you want the whole thing, you can buy a little table book. There's a little table book that actually has the whole speech in it, but I think this is one of the most motivating, inspiring videos I've ever watched on the internet. And I absolutely love it. So here we go.
There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. There happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about. By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day, and you get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day, you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour and then hit the sack early, because of course you have to get up the next day and do it all again. But then you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. And so now after work, you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of a work day and the traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. And when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. But you can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge overlit store's confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. And you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, et cetera, cutting stuff out because it's a long ceremony. And eventually, you get all your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lanes open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating, but you can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working the register, who is overworked at a job whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college. But anyway, you finally get to the checkout line's front and you pay for your food and get told to have a nice day in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. And then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags of groceries in your cart with the one crazy wheel that pulls maddeningly to the left, all the way out through the crowded, bumpy, littery parking lot. And then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of you graduates' actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year. But it will be. And many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that is not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in. Because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be pissed and miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations like this are really all about me, about my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look at how repulsive most of them are and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line. Or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply, personally unfair this is. If I choose to think this way in the store and on the freeway, fine. Lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrating, crowded parts of adult life when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I am the center of the world and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priorities. The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kinds of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stuck and idling in my way, it's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past and now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket's checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am, and that some of these people probably have much harder, more tedious or painful lives than I do. Again, please don't think I'm giving you moral advice or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way or that anyone expects you to just automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort. And if you are like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to. But most days, if you're aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of her husband who's dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady is the low-wage clerk at the motor vehicles department who just yesterday helped your spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. Of course, none of this is likely, but it's also not impossible. It just depends what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure that you know what reality is and who and what is really important, if you want to operate on your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you really learn how to think, how to pay attention, then you will know you have other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer hell type situation as not only meaningful, but sacred, on fire with the same force that lit the stars. Love, fellowship, the mystical oneness of all things deep down. Not that that mystical stuff's necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish. But please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water.
So, love that video. Love that commencement speech. But I think that that's a really good thing to understand here. Like when we look at like this idea of like reframing, a lot of times like everything can feel sometimes very unfair. Things can feel, like, of course you are the unluckiest person in the room, like this stuff kind of stuff. You're the person this stuff happens to, right? But like understanding that like, this world is like filled with lots of other people who are also doing their things, and like, eventually like that's going to collide, or looking at like, having awareness where it's like, well, this thing led to that thing, which led to this thing, which is where I'm at now, right? Can really help you, leads to a much fairer version of this world, which is what I really like about it. So here's like a really good example of like, negative statements you'll sometimes hear people say, which are not very accurate, versus reframe statements that are much more positive and accurate, right? So like somebody says like, I'm hopeless at exercising, right? When really the reality is like, well, there's times where you've been probably very active. There are certain things that you're quite good at. But right now you're finding it difficult to maybe fit time into your schedule. That doesn't mean you're bad at exercising. That means you're busy, or I'll never be able to run a marathon. It's like, well, I could start training for a 10K, and maybe like once I can achieve that, like my mom could never see herself running like a marathon, but like she absolutely has the ability. It would maybe take a very long time to train up to it, because she's never, I don't think my mom's ever run a mile. But like every human who has like a physical body is capable of like training up to these things, you know. That's just based on how human physiology can adapt to things. We just know that that's true. So reframing is all about like taking something that sometimes feels very negative and learning how to reframe it into something that's much more accurate. And generally, accurate is actually pretty positive a lot of times. You know, reality isn't quite as bleak as we often make it in our heads. So that's a big part of coaching, helping our clients reframe and think accurately about things. We also want to be able to establish a very clear focus for our clients, set specific goals that are easy to maintain, you know, stuff that they can, you know, specifically like actions that they can take, right? Turn like a goal into actions. That's a big, you know, part of what we do, rather than just leaving something as a goal. I think a lot of people have like a lot of goals, you know, and they've had them probably for a really long time and have not taken very many steps to achieve them. And a lot of times it's because like, how do you turn that goal into actions, you know? This is one of the reasons why like I like with my clients to create like a lot of like long-term and short-term goals. Or I'll help my clients develop like performance, outcome, and learning goals, all those different types of goals. Having a good blend of those things is a great way to like have actionable things to do. So performance goals, right? These are goals that are around like generally your client will create a goal that's really just about like, I just want to look fine, you know, like me, I don't exactly have the goal. I'm not passionate enough to care about it enough of being like a great dancer, but I do want to like learn enough about dancing to not look stupid at a wedding. And so I did. I know how to do all the very basic, you know, very easy to do little 2 steps, you know. I don't care to learn any more than that. But like, at least it's a, you know, at least I don't appear too goofy. So these are goals about establishing like a base understanding of a practice, you know. A lot of times like that's your client's just like, look, I don't need to be, you know, I just want to exercise regularly to keep myself like healthy. That's great. That's totally a great goal. Learning goals are a little bit different. These are around the idea of like, you know, becoming the master of something. You know, these lead to much higher self-esteem long-term wise, which is what's really great. So a lot of times like you'll get a client who will often come to the gym with like a performance goal. They're like, I want to do the bare minimum. My doctor said I need to lower my cholesterol. Great. All right, let's do it. Let's start exercising. We work with our client for a little while. Cholesterol goes down. They start feeling a little bit better. And it's like, hey, like, what's the next step? You know, remember how you were really motivated by like how many push-ups you were able to do in month 1 compared to month 2? Do you want to see if you can get up to 100? You know, like that's a learning goal. It's like a mastery goal, you know? And those are a great way to like really like when you've got this big thing that you're trying to like master over like a really long time, man, it leads to, you know, super motivated feelings that'll really keep you on the path for a long time. And that's how we turn, again, you know, something from like action where somebody's starting to do something into maintenance where it's like a habit, in determination, which is where it's like, yeah, they're just somebody who exercises. It's part of their lifestyle, you know. Providing options is a big part of the coaching role, right? Rather than just telling your client what to do, which again, we do not do, you know, providing options for our clients that they can choose to take, right? Gentle suggestions, you know, how does that fit for you is a really good example of that, or how do you feel about that, right? Asking those types of questions are the great ways to make sure that you are giving your clients something like, actually, that's not going to work for me. Great. All right. Well, I've got 6 other ways we can get to where you're headed, you know? And then asking appropriate questions is also big. You know, try to get to the root of what it is your client actually wants to achieve. I cannot tell you how many times my clients will come to me and say, I want to lose weight. And what they really mean is that they want to get healthy or run a marathon or, you know, this or that. And, or like they just want to feel better. And maybe weight is a part of that, but like a lot of times people have tied this concept of like their weight to their athleticism, their value, like a lot of different things. It really gets tied into lots of different pieces of our self-esteem. So asking powerful questions are a really great way to get to the heart of like what they really want, you know? If they say like if they're like, you know, yo-yo dieted for years, and it's like, well, what's stopping you from reaching your goals? It's like, it's just hard. It's like, well, okay, what about it is hard? right? We ask these, we want to get to the root, and they're like, well, like my family, we like to, we have a lot of like family dinners. We often like, we bond over like meals, like, and so I find that like eating properly is really hard for me and my family because like, one of the ways that like we show affection is like, acts of services and like gifts through like meals and stuff. And it's like, all right, great. So we know that that's true. Let's figure out a way that we can have like healthy versions of those things that are going to allow you to be just as affectionate and just as serviceable to someone else, but in ways that are also like productive towards you, like meeting your goals. So, it sounds like this is an excuse that feels like it's really holding you back, but let's see it as an opportunity instead. Let's say like, this is an opportunity for you to learn some really cool new recipes that are healthy that you can show to your family, which will in turn hopefully make them healthy as well. And that sounds motivating as heck, right? So those are a lot of the little like kind of pro tips. These are all the pieces of what we're talking about when we're talking about like being a coach. It's a lot of like little tiny things that we got to do every session. You don't have to do all of these things every session, but you need to be able to do any of these things every session. So let's go ahead and break down like what the coaching process looks like here. So breaking down the coaching process in basically 4 steps, right? So you're going to create a contract, and then you are going to meet with your client to discuss any of their issues, what their goals are, right? So once you've got that contract established, then our first session begins where it's like, okay, let's sit down and talk about like what it is you want to achieve, what's holding you back, like what issues do you have, like what let's get a very clear understanding of all this. Then as a coach, your job is to summarize everything they talked about. Summarizing everything is really helpful to make sure that you are compartmentalizing information and reviewing with your clients. Remember, our goal is to like keep driving them forward. So by summarizing everything, you are bringing their focus back to this initial goal. And then we are going to, over several sessions, we are going to, work to coach this client. So check to see how your client is doing, right, with their session. So start every session by, right when they come in, just a conversation right at the beginning, like, hey, how's it going? How was your workouts this week? Did you do your homework? How do you feel, right? Discuss any of their goals or homework that was assigned to them. It's like, okay, so you were supposed to do 30 minutes of cardio on Tuesday. Did that happen? Discuss their current situation, any new issues. And it's like, how are you holding up with like the schedule? Do you find that this is easy to maintain? Like what's going on? Like, are you, successfully doing this or not? And they're like, no, not really, like, what is it that's holding them back? It's like, well, I wasn't able to get the cardio session in because I'm really busy at work right now. Okay, so how do we like carve out more time? Do you need to go to bed earlier so you can get up earlier, which will give you a little bit more time before you have to go to work? You'll have a little bit more time that is free and free of interruptions. Can you do it after work? Can you get like mini sessions in? Can you take like a 10-minute? You're supposed to get 30 minutes in. Could you do 10 or 3 10-minute bouts instead? Stuff like that, right? And then we're going to measure their progress towards their goals. So we're going to sit down and be like, all right, well, let's check your weight. Let's check your body fat percentage. Let's check your measurements. Like, let's see, what are we, we're supposed to get this many minutes of cardio in this week, and this is how many we're supposed to get in by the end of the month. Do we meet those, right? Like, let's measure it all out. If we measure it out and we find that like, they're just not on the path anymore. Like maybe they missed, they didn't lose enough weight to like meet their overall long-term goal. Maybe we need to modify it, right? And say, all right, well, things have been tough lately. And so we are going to need to do just like a quick restructuring. We want to make sure that we are successfully meeting our goals. So let's make a modification if we need to. Ask any probing questions related to those goals, right? Again, get to the heart of like why they're trying to meet those goals. Why was it so easy to fall off the wagon? Sometimes it lies with their motivations. Then discuss what their expectations are next time. So then we're going to set up new goals for next week, and then confirm the next meeting. End your session by always making sure that you are setting up your next session. This process, by the way, this 4-step process is actually really similar to the 3-step problem solving process or the 3-step corrective exercise process that we implement as trainers constantly, right? As a trainer, your job is to identify a problem, solve that problem, and then implement the solution, right? We identify the problem with our fitness assessment. We solve the problem by writing a program based on that fitness assessment, and we implement that solution by training our client regularly. Coaching is really similar to that. We do an assessment. We come up with like whatever program is going to help them reach their goals, and then we check in with them very, 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 very regularly. So any questions on that, guys? Questions, comments, concerns? We got 2 little bits here at the end.
No.
All righty. So we talked about the trans-theoretical model of change, right? That's the stages of change. Another process that's also really helpful that is more focused around the idea of like how to flow a coaching session is what's called the Oscar model of change. Kind of similar, just a little different. This is going to give us a very clear structure for what our coaching process looks like. So the trans-theoretical model of change is a model that helps you, the stages of change is a model that helps you understand a client's willingness to change. The Oscar model of change is like a template for you as the coach to effectively flow your client through like a successful coaching process. So by following the Oscar model of change, you are naturally covering all of those freaking, I mean, a lot of things to do here, right? A lot of goals that we have, you know, a lot of, KPIs to freaking hit. We got a lot of different things that we have to do as a coach. So the Oscar model of change is basically this flow that helps you do all these things. If you be like, all right, what is my outcome? What's my situation, choices, actions, review, right? This is going to flow you through your session. So by focusing on the outcome side of it, right? This is the destination of the goal. So you as the coach are going to help your client clarify what their outcome is. Like what's their goal, right? You are going to clarify that out. Once you've done that, you're done with the O section of the Oscar model of change. Then you need to get you as the coach need a very clear understanding of what their situation is, right? So the coach gets clarity regarding where their client is right now, right? Maybe that's going to help the client develop their own awareness, right? This is water. Or maybe it is going to, you know, help you benefit, like understanding specifically, you know, what's going on with your client. So the outcome is the destination of the goal. So maybe ask your client, what's the desired long-term outcome? Like, what is it that your long-term goals are? Get a very clear understanding. Then say like, okay, well, why haven't you met that goal right now? Or where are you currently? Like, what's involved with you meeting your goal? What do you think you need to do to meet your goal, right? Remove all obstacles in the world. What's holding you back, right? That's getting a very clear understanding of the situation. Then we're going to look at choices and consequences, which is the options that your client has, right? So we're going to start laying out some choices that they can make, and then the consequences of those choices. Consequences, a lot of times people think that that's only the, you know, consequences are always negative. Consequences are positive. You know what the consequence is of, you know, putting money into a retirement account? Being a millionaire by the time you retire. That's the consequence. Oh no. Consequences are just simply outcomes, right? So there's a lot of very positive consequences out there. So we're going to help our client generate as many choices and alternative actions as possible, and help them understand like what the consequences of those choices are. So what choices you have made and what choices do you want to have in order to achieve like specific consequences that you are aiming for. And then actions, you as the coach are going to come up with some actions in order to meet those, develop those consequences. So when will you do it and with whom? That's a good like questions, right? What's your steps that you're going to take? You know, what are you going to do? What's the next action that you're going to make? When you leave the gym today, what's going to happen next? Love to ask that question to my client. They're like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get a healthy meal. And then they'll always be like, and I'm going to shower, I'm going to go to work. You know, like, all right, great. I don't only care about the first part of it, but awesome. Right? Love to always ask my client that right at the end of my sessions. I don't do it every single time, obviously, but like I love that question when it comes up. It's like, all right, what's going to happen next? They're like, I'm going to go eat some carbs. All right. And it's like, good. That means your glycogen stores will be ready so I can kick your butt again tomorrow. And then a review, right? You as the coach, you're going to review things consistently, always summarize things up, always review with your client, take them back, remind them continually. It's a big freaking wheel over and over and over again. Remind them, how are you, the coach, going to review progress? What measurements are you going to take? What are you going to do to review sessions? Like, what are their goals for next week? On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are they to do that, right? So that is going to be a big part of this, right? Using that Oscar model of change is a really great way. You will do all of these things naturally if you just do the Oscar model of change. It will happen for you. In the same way that you as the coach are trying to make things autopilot for your clients so that it is easy for them to stick to, the Oscar model of change will make being a good coach autopilot for you as the coach. Now, obviously, there are different ways that people are also going to learn different things. This is kind of fun. This is just at the end here. I don't necessarily do this actually very often with my clients, but I do think this is kind of a fun thing for you to be aware of. And this is called Kolb's learning styles. This is basically just the different types of learners. You guys have probably heard you're an auditory learner or a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner. A lot of our students here at Sochi are kinesthetic learners, which is actually the most rare of the types of learners that are out there. But we get a lot of them in PFT, which is kind of fun because we're just physical, touchy-feely people. So a lot of different learning styles out there. There's a little bit of a different approach to analyzing that. There's a diverging learning style. These are people who learn by like feeling things and watching. So a little bit empathetic and like a little bit of like a wallflower. They benefit from, if you are coaching someone who's like that, if you notice that like they're not so much a doer, they're more of like a thinker, then brainstorming sessions are a really effective way to coach these types of people. So sitting down with them and like really being like, well, why do you think this didn't work? Like, what can we do different? Thinking and brainstorming, really effective. These are people who like respond really well, to the writer's room approach. Assimilating clients. These are clients who learn by like watching and thinking about things. So honestly, these people like do really well when they see something happening. They see like physical proof. That's a really good way for these people to learn. So coaching benefits from displaying a deep understanding of the ideas and what needs to happen. So assimilating people will learn by like, seeing something actually happen, and they'll go, okay, I get that. But then they also learn by, the explanation behind it, the why behind it, right? Like, hey, we're going to do 12 to 20 reps. Why? Well, 12 to 20 reps has been shown not only to give your brain more time to learn how to do something, it also puts you into an aerobic energy system, which burns more calories. And it's a great way for you to develop stability in like your joints and connective tissue. And they're going to go, cool, right? They love to know the why behind things. Converging clients are learners who think learn by doing and thinking. Clients like this is gonna like, they love like a technical explanation, and they love like a demonstration. So this is like you're coaching somebody and it's like, okay, I want you to press like that, and they do like maybe a neutral press, and it's like, now try it with your hands this way, which is what you were doing before. You feel the difference? Like, I do feel the difference. It's like, great. That's a great way for like converging learners. And then accommodating learners are people who learn by like doing and feeling. These coaching benefits from like actions and initiatives, as well as like high levels of rapport. These people are your gut instinct people. Accommodating learners, you need to make sure you have a really good level of trust with. If they trust you, they will go to the ends of the earth doing whatever it is you tell them to do. And that's, a great way. So like you need to establish like a lot of rapport with this person and be like, all right, we're gonna do this hard exercise. And they're like, oh, really? It's like, yep. And I believe you can do it. And they're like, well, if you believe I can do it, then I can do it. That's an accommodating learner. So you can see a couple different like coaching agreements here. You can see, strategies to help with these different types of learners. So a diverging client, you should do a brainstorming session, right? Work closely with them, sit down and come up with things together. Assimilating clients, these are the ones who, want to generate like a lot of ideas and understand like why, what the reasoning behind things is. Converging clients, they really like the technical explanation. It's like, well, the ATP is doing this. I'm like, oh, cool. And then accommodating clients, this is where you want to build a very close personal relationship with your client. There's other types of intelligences as well out there. Those are your learning styles. There's also intelligences. Some people are logical, mathematical. Some people are spatial, musical, body kinesthetic. Lots of different types of learners out there. Linguistic are people who are good communicators. Spatial are people who are very good at visualizing. interpersonal, or people who, you know, relate through understanding others. So if you've got any of these, there's also like really good strategies that you can implement. You know, linguistic learners, use some metaphors. Logical, give them an analysis of the direct, you know, use a math example. Intrapersonal, people who have like a good understanding of themselves, discuss what they're feeling, what their old strengths and weaknesses are. Obviously, guys, these are all just tips and tricks. These are all a million things that you can implement. They're not necessarily things you have to implement every single session, but these are all tools in your tool. But that's a lot of what this class is. We're going to build, you know, really big toolboxes with lots of different tools in them for you to be able to like use any of them. Because sometimes that's what happens. You'll be working with a client for a little while and you're just like, man, like I'm just not getting through to this person. And you just need a new technique. This is a great way for you to like have a big list that you can revisit, read about, and be like, let's try this, right? However, that being said, there's no specific one tool that's going to work for everybody. There's a lot of like self-evaluation that's going to have to happen here, you know? And there are some issues that are going to come up with your clients as well. Sometimes there will be ambivalence. Your client's just like, it's like, hey, you said this was important to you. And they're like, yeah, I know, it's just not. Right? It's like, ugh. Ambivalence is tough, you know? Or maybe they have like inconsistent or incomplete behavior change. You know, like this is where, you know, some people are just not willing to change. If you are going to very rarely, but it may happen, get clients who, you know, we look at that stages of change. Rarely are you going to see somebody in pre-contemplation or contemplation. A lot of times we are getting new clients who are in preparation, or if we're awesome, we got a client who's in action. They're like, well, I've been working out for 6 months and I'm ready to take it to the next level. Oh, love that. That's an easy to stick to client. But if there's somebody who's like, well, you know, I just got this gym membership. I've never worked out before. That's a client who needs like a lot of personal attention. Pay attention to that client. We do not want that person to fall back into being like, F it, I don't actually care, right? We do not want them to fall backwards into not being willing to change. Some of your clients are not so good at self-reflection. That's another issue. You know, helping them understand their actions, understand their feelings, understand their thoughts, and, you know, or have awareness of those things. That can be tough sometimes. Be like, hey, how much do you think you exercise now? Like, I don't know. It's like, well, how do you think your diet is now? I don't know. I don't knows are rough. That can be an issue that we run into. So learning how to ask the right questions to get a clear understanding of things is going to be key. And then sometimes like competing commitments. Sometimes people want to change their diet and they want to exercise and they want to work 40-hour week. They got all these like different goals. They're like, I want to, you know, I'm saving up to be a millionaire by the end of the year and I want to do that. It's like, all right, like let's focus on small things that become sustainable. Once those become habits, let's do the other things, right? Rather than trying to do everything all at once. So a lot of different things that we are going to be talking about over the next week, which is really fun. We've got some really cool stuff coming down the pipe. Yeah, do you guys have any questions? How you guys feeling?
So far, so good. Pretty understandable.
Yeah, that. A little bit of a different pivot, right? A little bit outside of, we're getting out of the cells finally.
Yeah.
Dalen, how you feeling?
Good. I have a question. Is there any way we can get access to that video you showed?
This is water. So I can't send it. It's too big. So I can't send it through the email, but I think it is still on YouTube. If we look.
I was just about to ask that. Is it still available on YouTube?
So here's the original speech. It's about 20 minutes long. And there we go. There it is right there. A little 10-minute version. I'm going to put the link in the chat bubble right now.
Okay, cool.
Opens up. Come on. Seriously? Oh, there it is. Bam. I can try dragging it. I can't send it through email. I've tried sending it through email before. But let me see if I can drag it through Zoom. This has never worked once, but maybe it will work today. There you go. Looks like it's going through. Should be able to download through the chat bubble now. But yeah, love it, right?
Yeah.
So,
I grabbed it.
and then, like I said, it is on Amazon too. I have this little mini table book. And it's just this little, 20-minute speech. It's this little tiny hardback, $8. I love it. But this guy, man, he is, it's intense. I'm like, look at, there's like all these other ones now. All right. Cool. So that's going through. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording and see you guys on Monday. If you haven't had a chance to get your midterm or your homework, or I'm sorry, yeah, your final or your homeworks done, please knock those out over the weekend. I'd love to have those done by Monday.
Sounds good. See you Monday.
Monday, guys.